Welcome everyone. Today is the 20th of March. Yesterday, the Green Party launched their political campaign for the 2023 election. Although they were not shy to call the event the State of the Planet address, it was a very poor campaign launch with hardly any reference to the state of the global climate issues. Still, it's worth analyzing what their key messages were and what are the political consequences of this address. Now, before we start, I have to tell you that I am a supporter of green politics. It's coming to me from my childhood. I love snow, and it was shocking for me when in 1988 we went on my first ski trip into Czechoslovakia, and nobody remembered a time when around New Year's Eve there were no snow on the ski fields. It happened with us, and since then I am aware of global warming, so green politics comes naturally to me. Having said this, it's heartbreaking to see how miserable the Green Party is in New Zealand. Now, let's dive into the analysis of yesterday's event. As you could see in the thumbnail, I believe this is part of the road to a political suicide by the Greens, and I think you will see why I argue this. Concerning the event itself, it was Marabant Davidson who spoke first. She emphasized the values of the Green Party, the importance to preserve the environment for our children. She also talked about the coming election, and she expressed her worries that this would be the most divisive election in decades. There were some policies that she mentioned, trying to encourage her own audience it's worth voting for the Greens. The first policy was the reduction of the voting age to 16. I don't know how many voters they might gather with this idea, but yeah, they included it. They would keep it. It is their intention, we have to accept. Davidson also stood up for the traditional green policies to fight against climate change and argued that it is possible to implement anti-climate change measures and reduce social inequalities at the same time. However, she didn't say any details about how it might be achieved. In interviews after the event, she expressed that the excess profits should be taxed, and she emphasized the recent amount of bank profits. No further details were released though. Now, coming to Shaw's speech, it was much longer and more problematic. It was rather negative, and I would say it's unusual that the Greens use hate element in their speeches, but this time Shaw wasn't short of these. Probably the most important reference to global environmental issues was when he asserted there was a climate emergency. It's officially declared in New Zealand, but it wasn't clear whether he meant it was a global issue or just the New Zealand state of the current affairs. We have a climate emergency here, but who knows how long. And she also criticized the policies of the opposition parties, National and ACT, because he believes this time no party can win majority, like Labour did in 2020. National will need the support of the ACT party. That would be, as he described, the most reactionary, race-baiting, right-wing government that we have seen in decades. He also mentioned Christopher Luxon might not wait until the election, he might be replaced. I don't know the chances of that. I believe Luxon's gonna stay. He has a strong role identity, and he's not a career politician, unlike Shaw. Yeah. Shaw described his attitude towards the current role. Marmar, Davidson, and Shaw are ministers of this government, although outside of cabinet. And he had to explain why he is not walking away after the government dumped relevant green policies to fight the cost of living crisis last week. Although he was questioned, allegedly on Thursday last week, why not just walks away, he is adamant that he got their mandate to be ministers and represent the green values. So they are not walking away. This explanation is quite vague, however, I can understand it. He also talked about why they can be proud of their results. True, Shaw as a minister could achieve more than any former Green politician. Among these, the Zero Carbon Act is the most relevant. But if we remember properly, the National Party also supported it in 2019, so it's not sure why a national-led government would be a catastrophe, but anyway, it shows opinion, we have to accept it, although we might disagree. Finally, he mentioned that the wealthiest people should pay after their unearned profits. Not sure what he meant by this. The problem with this note is that the Greens recommended the wealth tax already. However, the Greens themselves noticed that there is a problem with it, namely, despite someone has wealth, he or she might not have actual income from it. Therefore, they intend to implement the wealth tax only when there is sufficient income to pay it. So if someone doesn't have any income from an asset, they don't have to pay until they have sufficient income. But in that case, it might become a capital gains tax, which already exists in New Zealand. So when someone sells an asset, it might be sold on a higher price than it was purchased, so the difference is the basis of capital gains tax. I will provide a link in the description which analyzes that capital gains tax already exists in New Zealand. So the wealth tax in its form, as they imagine it, is very, very problematic and might indeed overlap with the capital gains tax anyway. Okay, moving on. What is the assessment of this state of the planet address? Well, I would highlight that there were embarrassing mistakes the Greens made yesterday. I already mentioned the problem of the wealth tax and the capital gains tax. The excess tax on profits is also problematic. An analysis into the causes of excess profits should be performed first to understand how the regulatory bodies might intervene on the market to intensify competition. It might be an extension of the retailer and grocery store analysis, but yeah, banks might have achieved excess profits last year, but it might not be a trend. So there must be a proper analysis first, and I would say intervention in the market to increase competition would be the better solution rather than imposing a one-off waterfall tax. Now, because Shaw ruled out the possibility to form a coalition with National, he devalued the Green votes. If the party wanted to choose the best green program, what they can achieve with the next government, he should not yet have excluded any options. Bernard Hickey warned about this, highlighting that the Greens feel better in the Labour stand. It weakens them already. I remember a case when the main governing party in Hungary had more than 50%. With them having more than 50%, there was no necessity for a coalition government. It occurred in 1994, and then the hereditary party of the former Communist Party, the Hungarian Socialist Party, had 54% in parliament. the Free Democrats had 18%. They did not have to go to form a joint government unless it intended to implement a new constitution. Constitutional law is it needs a 67% majority in parliament. Because the socialists voted against, they vetoed the new constitution in 1996. For the Free Democrats, there was no more reason to remain in government. However, they stayed, and it proved to be a catastrophe for them because they almost got out of parliament completely. Now, for the Greens, Prime Minister Hipkins offered a strong option for a way out last week when he dumped relevant Green policies. If the Greens had resigned from government roles, I believe that would have sent a strong message for the voters and for everyone who is interested in Green policies. I argue it might even push them much higher in the polls. But it seems for them, Davidson and Shaw, it is better to enjoy a ministerial salary for 6 more months rather than standing up for their policies. Now, the most embarrassing moment arrived when Shaw said that he was proud of all the Green Party MPs because in the last 5 years they have made more action on climate change than the combined efforts of governments over the last 30 years. James, oh dear. The last 30 years includes the last 5 years as well. Do the math, please. Okay, moving on. First of all, Shaw argued that the solutions are better for everyone. Well, if this is the case, why is it that the market forces have not created a situation where we use only green solutions already? Come on, something is off. It might not be true. Okay, what it means for the political landscape. In the current situation, the two largest parties seem to have almost equal voting base. Importantly, as the Greens' fear from the ACT party shows, among the small parties, ACT has the most stable voting basis. On the right side of the spectrum, it is crucial. Yes, it is crucial because their voting base is less likely to vote strategically this time. On the left, there are two huge conditionalities. First, it seems right that the Greens will struggle to reach the 5% threshold. After yesterday's announcements, well, they kicked the arse of the National and ACT, and they already reacted that, okay, they are not interested in forming any coalition with the Greens. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Now, we need to remember that in 2020, national voters opted for Labour just to squeeze the Greens out of any position to hold the Queenmaker role. This year it can happen again, but this time Labour voters might feel compelled to save the country from the Green Party having a strong position in forming coalitions. The same goes for Te Pāti Maori. I believe the New Zealand voters have the wisdom to secure that Te Pāti Maori does not have kingmaker position, especially because co-governance agendas are very, very controversial, to the least. They are fundamentally mistaken to the most. The swing from the left camp towards the right might not be so flexible as it would be the other way, like 2020 showed us. The two risky options, either the Greens having kingmaker role or Te Pāti Maori having it. Now this might compel some Labour voters to vote strategically and force these leftists out from from the rolls. Now, many depends on if there is any more parties in parliament. With the relatively low popularity of both Labour and National, small parties might cross the 5% line. I think of two parties. Top might get in, the Opportunities Party. However, their program is less known. They have only a land tax idea, which is similar to the Greens' wealth tax proposal. They might find partners on the left easier, but it's also conditional. Another more likely option is that the New Zealand First re-enters Parliament. They are positioned in the centre, and they already announced that they would not form any government with this current Labour leadership, and that pushes the chances of the right side of the voting base to win the election even more. All the possible outcomes strengthen the likelihood of a national-led government after 14th of October. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for your attention and see you in the next one.